You've got debt. You want to pay it off, but you're not sure where to start. Do you pay the smallest amount off first or the most expensive one? Joel Sandwith is here to discuss it. Let's begin.
This is Debt Free in 30. Here's your host, Doug Hoyes.
Joel, welcome back. How are you doing today?
I'm good, Doug. Thanks for having me back. You know, the last time we did this was a couple of months ago, and the time before that was 8 years ago.
I remember that, yes.
I'm very pleased to be invited back.
And the last time you were here, I think you were physically here in Kitchener.
I was right there across the desk from you.
Now you are just a figure on a monitor. I believe you are coming to us from your London office today. So,
I am, exactly right.
So we got half the province covered here. So, okay, let's get right into this here because, and we'll come up with a clickbaity title for this show. But really what this comes down to is people are watching this. They got a bunch of debt. Okay, What do you do? How do you start? What's the first thing you should do when you start to notice you got a lot of debt? And probably for a lot of people, it's a feeling of unease. It's like, okay, I know things are going off the rails. What do I do? So before we get into the specific methods, do you have any big picture comments you want to start us with as to what someone should do when they are faced with a bunch of debt?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what I would call it is doing like a personal assessment. You want to understand where you actually stand. Now, this is a bunch of different things, and I think we could go on for a long time, but what it comes down to is, can you make yourself a list of the debts so you can understand who you owe money to and how much? And do you have a sense of what your income is and what your basic living expenses are? That's going to be your starting point. Where do I actually stand right now, and what can I do next?
I agree. And when I suggest people make that list of debts, it's pretty simple. I got, this credit card, whatever. I like them to put the total amount and how much the interest rate is and what the minimum payment is.
100%. I couldn't agree more. You want to know what you're effectively up against, what you need to resolve.
And it's very common in our world for you or I to be sitting down with someone. And when they make that list, how much do the minimum payments total of the typical person we're meeting with?
Oh, I mean, in terms of like raw dollars, over $1,000 a month for almost everybody at this point. It's typically more than they're recognizing is the thing that I find. That, a person might say, I don't know, it's costing me $500 or $600 a month. Well, you make that list and it turns out to be $1,300 a month. And hey, there is our problem. This is eating up too much of your very sparse income in comparison to the cost of living these days.
Yeah, absolutely. Even if you've got an okay job, you're bringing in $3,000 a month. Well, if your rent is $2,000 and if your debt payments are $1,000, it's really hard to be buying food, which of course also costs a lot of money. So that's the problem. And I agree. So step number one, you got to take stock. Where am I at? Who do I owe money to? And then how much money is coming in? How much is going out? And usually when you do that, it becomes pretty obvious. It's like, okay, I got $3,000 coming in and $5,000 going out. I got a problem. I got to deal with it. So there are two methods that the gurus write about, and you can give me your thoughts on both of these. One is the Snowball method, and the other is the Avalanche method, because they all have to have a winter theme, I guess, right? That's what it comes down to.
That can only be cold.
It can only be cold, absolutely. So before we talk about each of them, what is your general opinion of both of those concepts?
Well, my general opinion, I can sum up this way. I can never keep those two terms straight. I have to look them up because to me, they are gimmicks. It's just, I don't know, does it sell a book maybe? Or does it get a person to click on an article? It's certainly not methods that are actually overly helpful in most cases. They have their differences and there is some value to them, but it's a kind of a gimmicky phrasing, I think.
Okay, there we go. They're gimmicks. So we'll definitely try to make the title of this show something like Debt Snowball versus Avalanche or something so that we can get all the clickbait stuff. So
we want a debt sunset, don't we?
Oh, absolutely. That'd be good too. We'll see how much graphics we can get in the thumbnail on this. So and I agree with you. These are words, these are gimmicks, but okay, I guess gimmicks work. Because
there's a basis.
Yeah, I mean, if the gimmick is I want to get in better shape and I'm going to try to walk 10,000 steps a day, Okay, well, is there any magic to 10,000 steps a day? No, it's just a made up number. But if it makes me do something, I guess that's good. So okay, let's delve into them and we can figure out if it's a gimmick or if there's any substance here. So let's start with the Snowball method. And you're right, I have to look them up too whenever I talk about them. So I'll give you a hint. The Snowball method prioritizes balances. Okay.
Yes.
That's the difference. So what is the Snowball method? And I'll give you the scenario. I got 5 different debts. That's the scenario. So
here's what you're wanting to do if you're looking into the Snowball method. You want to line those debts up by the size of the debt. We're not worried at this stage about the minimum payment or necessarily the interest rate. We're looking at the volume of the debt. You've got, let's say, you got an $800 payday loan, $2,000 credit card, $5,000 line of credit, etc. The idea in the Snowball method is you're going to try and make your minimum payments on everything. This is a really key point with both of these, is you're not going to neglect any debt if you can avoid it. But any extra cash that you have within whatever your spending limits are, you're going to put that money against those smaller debts. You're going to get rid of them one at a time. You're going to snowball to the next highest debt with what that payment was. You're going to just try and work on them a piece at a time.
And why would I do that?
I think it's a sense of accomplishment. So this is where my sort of example that I give all the time of this is the weekend chores. So I will typically have, unless there's something important that I have to be at or something, I'll typically have, a bit of a list of things that I want to get done in a weekend. I am a creature of going after the low-hanging fruit. So if you give me a choice between taking down the Christmas lights or throwing on a load of laundry, I am going after that load of laundry like nobody's business. I can check that thing off the list. It's a simpler thing to do. Then it allows me some time to put into the next thing. And I feel like I'm accomplishing something, even if the whole list doesn't get done.
Well, and as we are recording this, we are more than halfway through the year. So I would just leave the Christmas lights up because it's going to circle around again anyways, and it won't matter.
I'm going to tell you that's where they're at.
That's exactly it. But you're right. I go for the easy thing first because then I've done it. I've got that sense of accomplishment. I'm going to unload the dishwasher. Boom. That took me 3 minutes. That was easy. So, and now I've accomplished something. Great. I can go on to the next thing. I've got a sense of motivation, and accomplishment. Okay. That's the good part about the Snowball method. What's the bad part then?
Well, here we are late in the year and I still have Christmas lights on the outside of my house. But where it draws into the debt side is, if you are paying the smallest debt and not paying attention to the size of the interest on the debt that you're paying, there is a serious risk that it's going to take you more time and cost you more money to get out of debt, because really what is the harmful part of debt is the interest rate, how much money you're paying to owe it. So if you are going after the small stuff instead of the larger interest, you might actually be costing yourself more money and time. I can tell you, it's no fun taking Christmas lights down in November and you got to put them right back up.
There you go. So, okay, there must be another method then that prioritizes interest. Oh, look at that. It's right in my notes. It's called the Avalanche method.
Yep.
So in the debt avalanche method, you are prioritizing interest. So tell me the story again, but this time prioritize interest.
Yeah. So in this method, the plan would be not to line up the debts based on the size of the debt, but on the interest rate. And again, the purpose here is to stay on top of everything. So you're wanting to make your minimum payments on all of them, but you're wanting to take any extra free cash flow and put it towards the highest interest debts first, because the more you pay off on the higher interest rate debt, the less interest you will accumulate the next month and going forward. It will save you money over time.
Yeah. So if I've got a payday loan, a finance company loan, a credit card, and a bank loan, well, that's exactly how they would line up. In Ontario, a payday loan is allowed to charge $15 on every 100 you borrow. So if you're borrowing for 2 weeks, that works out to a 390% interest rate. So by paying it off completely and not rolling it over, I've saved myself 390%. A finance company loan might be 45%. So again, if I pay $1,000 loan off a year early, I've saved myself $450. My credit card might be 20%. So same thing, pay the $1,000 off early. I've saved myself $200, which is still pretty good. And then if it's a traditional bank loan, a line of credit, something, maybe a line of credit where the interest rate's 10%. Okay, I'm obviously saving less by paying it off. So now to me, that just seems like a no-brainer. Now, maybe that's because I'm an accountant. What is your view?
I think it really comes down to a lot of people's personalities struggle with the idea of having a lot of different things that they are dealing with. I know I do. There's no question about this. This is not criticism of our clientele or other people. I put myself in this same group. So the issue with doing it in this method is you're allowing debts to linger. That sense of accomplishment takes longer to get to. So you're saving more money, and you know this, you can prove it on paper, but you're still seeing those higher number of debts sitting out that you're not getting that immediate sense of accomplishment you do with the Snowball.
Well, I guess it's more administratively complex having 5 debts instead of 3, because of course they each have a different due date each month. And so now I'm trying to juggle. So by paying off the lower the smaller debts first, they're done, they're cleaned up. Now I only have to worry about 3 payments each month instead of 5, right. And therefore I guess I'm more likely to do it. So really your answer to the question, which one should you use, is psychology as much as money.
I think so. And I think there's also the question of, is either of them actually going to help you? And I mean, maybe this is delving into a whole other topic, but is either of them actually going to get you anywhere in the medium to long term? Are you actually making progress paying off a couple of little debts or paying off a portion of a higher interest debt? I think you want to take, I'm not sure if I love this word, but a bit more of a holistic approach to your finances. Am I actually paying down the debt? Is it actually getting smaller? Is there a chance that other things are not getting paid or that other debts are getting taken on? Okay, let's talk about that. And I don't know what the word holistic means because I'm not as smart as you. I don't have as much book learning, but let me ask the question a different way then. How much debt is too much to be trying either one of these methods? Because obviously if I've got $100,000 worth of debt and I do the math and I can afford $100 a month, okay, it's going to take me 17 lifetimes, I think, to pay that off. Right. So how do I calculate what the upper limit is when, you know what, neither method is going to work for me? It's an excellent question. And I'm going to use another term I like, critical mass. I think there is a critical mass of debt for any individual or family that once you go beyond that massive debt, you're simply never going to pay it off. It's not going to work. You're going to need another method. Now, there's a few different ways that you could measure this. You could measure income versus total debt. You could measure certain ratios and so on. And honestly, that gets too complicated for me to really figure out. But here's my method of figuring it out. If you take your monthly net income and you subtract from that your most vital expenses, we all know what those are. You got to live somewhere. You got to eat something. You probably have places to go. And then you look at your minimum payments, your absolute minimum payments before you start talking about throwing money at other debts. Well, if the expenses and the minimum debt payments are higher than the income, you have reached critical mass. You no longer get the benefit of either a debt snowball or a debt avalanche method because there's no extra money to pay down those debts.
So it comes down to a math question. And I agree. And when you get your credit card statement, it says if you make your minimum payment, it's going to take you, I think the record I saw was like, 97 years or something to pay something off. And in terms of years, okay, if it's going to take 6 months to pay it off, then great, buckle down. If it's going to take a year, if it's going to take 2 years, okay. At some point though, if I'm 60 years old and I want to retire at age 65 and it's going to take me till I'm 80, then I am past the stage of critical mass. Absolutely. I've got a little anecdote I'll tell you from a client from years ago, and he told it to me in a sense of humor. So I hope we'll all take it in that same way. He'd received a credit card statement that had one of those notes at the bottom. It was going to take him 62 years to pay off his debt, and I don't want to get into the gentleman's age, but let's say that he was older than us. What?
And he said he wrote them a letter, and the letter he said, if you can guarantee that I will live 62 years, I will guarantee that I will pay off all this debt.
Probably didn't get a response, I'm guessing.
He did not hear
he
back
did not hear back from them. But,
No.
but yes, in an example like that, okay, most of us don't have 62 years left on this planet.
That's
So
right.
it's probably not the ideal scenario. So okay, we've talked about the math, we've talked about the psychology, and I think the defining feature for me as an accountant is the numbers, but I can see how for most people it's going to be, what will I actually do?
Yes.
And is that really the most important criteria then? Is like, what will you actually do?
I think so. I mean, I guess to me, I look at it and I think, well, what are your actual possibilities? What can actually be done? Can you improve your income? I mean, if you can, that's wonderful. But if that was that easy, right, you wouldn't need a podcast like this. You wouldn't have thousands of people listening every week to ideas about managing debt and other personal financial issues. Can you combine it into one other type of payment? Can you throw it all into one thing? Maybe that'll help. There's different ways to do that. But what's actually open to you as an option?
Well, and that's a good question. So let's talk about options then. So you just mentioned basically debt consolidation.
Yeah.
So throw it all into one. So I've got 3 credit cards. I go to the bank and I say, hey, bank, can you give me a loan to pay off those 3 credit cards? And now I've got one payment each month. And under what circumstances is that a good idea?
Well, first off, if you can qualify for a fair deal. And certainly one of the things I think, I know you'll run into this, I certainly do on a daily basis talking with people, is the math is secondary in some cases to the qualification. So can a bank that can offer a fair interest rate qualify you to borrow enough money to pay off the existing debt? If that's possible, okay, step 1 accomplished, not always an easy thing to do. But then step 2 is it enough help? So we want to look back at the math again. So let's say you go to your bank or a bank, and they are able to qualify. Yes, you can borrow X number of dollars, X number of years, here's all the terms. Well, what's the payment and for how long? Does that payment fit into that quick math? My income minus my basic living expenses. Is the payment that I'm being offered low enough that I'll actually be able to pay it? Because if not, that is not going to help you. You're just going to re-borrow to pay that debt.
Yeah, if I do the math and I've got $500 available in my budget for debt service, and the loan is going to cost me $800 a month in payments, it's not going to work. Like it's clearly not an option. So, but if you do qualify and if you do have consistent income, then yes, absolutely. That would certainly be an option to consider. Now, I want to throw at you some other ideas about how to deal with debt other than what we've talked about. So one of them would be, I've got a couple of credit cards, converting the credit card itself to a fixed term loan. So maybe I talk to the credit card lender and I say, look, I know you're not going to lend me any more money, but can we freeze it, turn it into, I'm going to pay it off over 3 years, maybe give me a more favorable interest rate, and I will agree to freeze the card, cut up the card, whatever. Is that an appropriate strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and again, it's got to fit within, is it enough help? So let's say that you can get a credit card or two to help you to do that. You're kind of building your own consolidation in a way. And if that's enough, great. But if you have other creditors, other people that you owe money to who are not in a position to or unwilling to do that, again, how does the math work? Is it enough savings on a couple of cards every month to make it possible to pay everybody else as well?
It's not helping you. Now, So let's say you pick either one of these methods, Snowball or Avalanche or whatever. Maybe you don't qualify for a debt consolidation loan, so you're doing it yourself. Do you think it is a good idea, as I pay down a credit card, to contact the company, the credit card lender, and say, hey, I want you to lower my credit limit?
Yeah, I do personally, absolutely. I know that there are arguments in terms of, but your credit score and closing accounts. And I'm just going to say this, blah, blah, blah. Credit score is meaningless when you are trying to get out of debt. What you are aiming to do when you're trying to get out of debt is be free of the debt. The credit score can always go back up, cancel the cards, maybe keep one. I mean, obviously, as people point out all the time, this society almost demands you have access to a credit card, but get rid of your access to the thing that is causing you this pain.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And obviously everybody's situation is different. And from a credit report point of view, you're right. Your credit score is based on a number of things, one of which is history. So if you've had that credit card for 10 years, and obviously it's still active and notionally in good standing, then that is helping your credit score. That is increasing your credit score. So if you pay off that credit card and cancel it, well, now you've taken that thing that had 10 years worth of history and blown it away. So I guess if my plan is to pay off my debt this year, save a bunch of money next year, and 2 or 3 years from now, buy a house, okay, I guess I don't want to be actually closing the credit card then, because now I am potentially lowering my credit score. But the flip side is, as you said, if this is what's causing me the pain, I've got all these credit cards, all this access to debt, it's too tempting, I'm getting myself into trouble, then I would be better off canceling it, or at the very least reducing the credit limit, and then I can't get into any further trouble. So you really got to ask yourself, what is going to work for me again?
Yeah, absolutely. And I do see that side of the argument, keep the old credit open, have a good credit score. I'm going to allow a little of my ongoing cynicism in here, if I may. I do see a lot of, I know you do too. I'm not telling you anything new. We see a lot of people struggling under mountains of debt. And if we're not looking at a whole solution to things, I'm a little concerned that a person makes a choice that supposedly helps them a little on this side and hurts them on this side. So to some extent, sometimes you need to cut off the problem. So I know I'm being repetitive here, but I believe in this, that your credit score is secondary to your overall financial health. It really is.
Well, and as I always say to everybody, who's the richest guy you know? I mean, you're pals with Warren Buffett, so that would probably be the richest guy you know.
I was in Omaha over the summer.
Well, there you go.
Actually,
so
months ago.
You probably went to Dairy Queen with him because that's where he hangs out.
I didn't, but I got a Cinnabon.
Okay, so that's basically the same, I guess. Yeah. Equal health benefits.
Yes.
So, I mean, this is a guy who I assume has $1 billion in his bank account or maybe even in his jeans. I don't think he cares what his credit score is because he is focused on a whole bunch of other things. So if I want to determine whether I have self-worth as a human being, credit score is not the thing I pick.
No.
And if I had to pick something financial, I guess it would be, am I able to save a couple of bucks every month? That would be a greater priority for me. Because,
And can you sleep at night? Are you sleeping?
Absolutely. And
are you sleeping at night? Are you sleeping at night with your credit card and your debt?
That's
I don't know.
Right. And
I bet you're not. I know I didn't back in the day.
Yeah. And if it's causing you more trouble, then it's a problem. Okay. So let's go to the final topic. Okay. And you've already gone through and exposed all the gimmicks, and we now know the word holistic means whole. You favor a whole approach. Okay, that makes sense. I don't know if it's spelt with a W or not, but we'll look it up. We'll look it up later. So what do you do then in the case where I have way too much debt? And this is where you put in the commercial for Hoyes Michaelis. Just I'm giving you the heads up here so everyone can watch it coming. So okay, I got $50,000, $100,000 worth of debt. I got laid off during the crisis of 3 years ago, and it all built up, and I haven't been able to reestablish employment. I got divorced. I have medical issues, whatever it is. And so, organizing my debts in terms of dollar value or interest rate, it doesn't matter. The math doesn't work. I am way over my head. So what then is the next option?
Well, this. I'm going to jump right to it. This is where we look at filing a consumer proposal. There are things you come and talk to somebody like me or Doug like you. You're going to talk about a few different things. There's no question. But what we are finding frequently is that the exact correct solution, once a person sees those options, is a proposal where we are marshaling all of your creditors into a group. We are making an offer to that group of creditors to share in some money. You're going to pay back less than what you owe. They are going to get back part of their money. They're going to waive the balance of that debt. When you finish those payments, you're going to save, in most cases, a ton of money. You're going to be able to rebuild your credit. It's not good for your credit to do a proposal, but you're going to be able to rebuild that credit. And you're going to be able to save money, and you're going to be able to stop worrying about how much of your hard-earned money is going to profit the people you've had to borrow from.
Yeah, and if you're considering a consumer proposal, do you have a perfect credit score now? Probably not.
Or is it doing you any good? This is the conversation I have with people all the time. So you've got a 693 credit score. Go get a mortgage. You're not getting a mortgage at a fair rate. They're going to take advantage of you. So what you want is you want to have no debt. Rebuild your score, because your score today isn't going to help you at all.
Yeah, if you have a broken leg, physio is not the answer. I don't think. I'm not a doctor, so don't look to this podcast for medical advice. But I think the answer is, okay, the doctor's going to put a cast on it or whatever, and there's going to be a rebuilding period. And then the cast comes off. You got to walk slowly and gradually build it up. But in the future, your leg can be just as strong, maybe stronger than what it was before. So yeah, you're taking a hit. There's a dip. Your credit score drops. Your physical health drops when you got a broken leg. But if you follow the steps, you can come out the other side better off. So trying to live with a broken leg for a long period of time doesn't make sense. You're better off getting it fixed and moving on. That's really what we're talking about here.
Yes, absolutely. I agree.
So, okay, so let's summarize then. You are of the view that the Snowball method and the Avalanche method are gimmicks, I believe was the word you said.
It is.
And you are a cynic in many of these things. But I think we both agree that there are germs of truth in both methods. So
Yes.
So give me your 30-second, 1 minute overall summary then. I've got a bunch of debt.
Yeah.
What is my thought process? How do I figure out what the best option is for me?
Well, we start back again with that personal assessment. What are all the debts? Just make a list. Who do you owe? How much do you owe them? What is the interest rate? What are your minimum payments? What do you got coming in a month from whatever sources of income you have? Think of all of them. Think of your basic, most important living expenses. This doesn't have to be on a spreadsheet. It doesn't have to be on an app. It can be, I guess, but it can just be on a sheet of paper. What have I got coming in? What have I got going out? Can I manage those things? And if so, wonderful, good for you. And if you can't, you need to find a better way to put those things in a basket.
And I would add to that, look in your own brain. What kind of person are you? Are you the kind of person who is going to be motivated by knocking off the smaller balances first so that I've got that feeling of accomplishment and so that I don't have to worry about trying to juggle multiple payments? Or are you more of an accountant type brain? It's like, well, everything is by the numbers. I'm knocking off the higher dollar ones first. And mathematically, okay, obviously the Avalanche method is financially superior because of you're saving more in interest. But if you're not going to do it, then, or if that's going to, mess with your mind, it doesn't make sense. It's like saying, okay, what's the best diet? Is it keto or is it carbs, or I don't know all the different, clearly I don't know anything about dieting. So I should not be commenting.
I'm on the carb diet.
You're
myself,
on the carb diet. Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
And so, and the answer is, well, any kind of diet you can lose weight on any diet because it's all about calories. And so, but if I really love this kind of food and really hate that kind of food, then picking the kind of diet where I got to eat the food I don't like, that's not going to work. So I wouldn't go for the absolute perfect strategy that's the mathematically absolute best thing. I think it makes more sense to look at what can I actually do, crunch the numbers, and then do it. And if the Avalanche or the Snowball method isn't going to work for you because the numbers are too high, well then I guess they're tracking you or me down, and we're gonna come up with another answer. That's really what it comes down to.
I agree. Absolutely.
There you go. So there is the summary. So Joel, thank you very much for being here. So people can find you in our London office. I mean, you'll talk to people anywhere in the province. So
absolutely. I
will put a link in the show notes to how people can track you down. And obviously you're happy to chat with anybody anytime. So if you like Joel's approach to how he deals with things, then there you go. There's a guy to talk to. Joel, thanks very much for being here today.
And thanks for having me, Doug. Nice to see you.
We'll see you again in 8 years, I guess, because that's how often we have you on the show. So there you go, Joel Sandwith from the Hoyes Michaelis office today in London. I will put links in the show notes to everything we talked about today. I've got an article where we've gone through in detail the debt, the Snowball versus the Avalanche method. But I think what you'll want to focus on is what will work for you. That's really the bottom line to it. That is our show for today. As I said, full show notes are on YouTube. And for those of you listening to the audio version, which is most of you, please like and subscribe. We're on all the different platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all the different ones. A new show comes out every Saturday morning. So by subscribing, you will get notified of each new show. There will be a new show next week. Until then, thanks for listening. I'm Doug Hoyes. That was Debt Free in 30.